The holographic display flickered with red markers across 17 star systems. Each marker represented a world that had gone silent in the last month. Ambassador Tilren watched the lights disappear one by one, knowing that entire civilizations were being consumed behind those fading signals. The diplomatic chamber buzzed with panicked voices. Representatives from 6 different species argued over strategies that had already failed. The Chitauri diplomat's forearms moved in agitation as he tried to maintain order. Nobody was listening anymore. Fear had replaced reason. Commander Halen pushed through the crowd and activated the central display. The room fell silent. New data streamed across the screen, and the news was worse than anyone expected. The swarm had taken the Kelmer system overnight. 3 billion souls gone. The parasitic hive mind was accelerating its advance. "We have 70 ships left," Halen said quietly. His voice carried the weight of too many battles and too many losses. 6 months ago, we had 300. At this rate, the coalition will cease to exist before the year ends. A Vorian counselor stood, her crystalline features reflecting the red warning lights. "Then we negotiate. Surely there must be terms we can offer." "You cannot negotiate with a force that views you as food," Tilren replied. He had seen the footage from border worlds. The swarm did not conquer. It consumed. It adapted. It learned. Every weapon the coalition deployed became useless within weeks as the hive mind evolved countermeasures. The debate continued for hours, circling the same impossible problem. They were losing, and no one had answers. Tilren felt the weight of his position. As senior ambassador, tradition demanded he find solutions. But what solution existed when facing extinction? A junior aide named Prin approached hesitantly. The young Chitauri had only joined the diplomatic corps last year, full of idealism that the war had not yet crushed. "Ambassador, if I may suggest something?" "Unless you have a hidden fleet, I doubt it will help," Tilren said, more harshly than intended. Prin did not back down. "What about the humans?" The room's noise dimmed slightly. Several counselors turned to look. The human species was known to the coalition, but barely. They had been discovered only 3 years ago, living on a brutal death world they called Earth. Initial surveys suggested they were decades behind galactic technology. Most importantly, they had no military alliances with anyone. "The humans have nothing to offer us," Halen said. "Their world is classified level 9 hostile. The fact they survived there is impressive, but they lack our technology, our numbers, our experience." "But they survived a death world," Prin insisted. "Every report notes their unusual resilience. Their planet has predators that would terrify most species. They endured ice ages, plagues, resource shortages. They fought wars among themselves that should have destroyed them, yet they united." Tilren considered this. He had read the reports on humanity. The species confused xenobiologists. They formed emotional attachments to other species. They kept carnivorous predators as companions in their homes. They showed remarkable capacity for both violence and compassion. Most puzzling was their tendency to protect strangers even at cost to themselves. "What exactly are you proposing?" Tilren asked. "Send them a request for aid? Explain our situation. Perhaps they will surprise us." Commander Halen laughed bitterly. "Even if they wanted to help, what could they send? A few primitive ships? We need hundreds of vessels, weapons that can adapt as fast as the swarm, soldiers willing to face impossible odds." "Then we have nothing to lose by asking," Prin said simply. The logic was sound. Tilren looked around the chamber at the exhausted faces of species watching their civilization crumble. Pride seemed like a luxury they could no longer afford. "Very well," Tilren decided. "Prepare a message. Keep it simple. Explain that the coalition is facing an extinction-level threat. Request any assistance they can provide. Military, medical, supplies, anything." Prin worked quickly, drafting the message while other diplomats watched with skepticism. Within an hour, the transmission was ready. Tilren reviewed it one final time. The words were honest, perhaps too honest. It read less like a formal diplomatic request and more like a desperate plea. "Send it. Tilren ordered. The message jumped through relay stations toward the Sol system. Response time would be at least 2 weeks, assuming the humans bothered to reply at all. Most coalition members expected silence or perhaps a polite refusal. Tilren dismissed the council and returned to his private quarters. Through the window, he could see coalition patrol ships limping back from the front lines. Damaged hulls, depleted crews, the marks of another losing battle. He activated his personal terminal and pulled up Earth's file. The planet appeared on screen, mostly blue with swirls of white clouds. It looked beautiful and utterly deadly. Storms that could flatten cities. Temperature extremes that ranged from burning deserts to frozen wastelands. Tectonic activity that regularly reshaped the surface. Yet humans thrived there. One detail caught his attention. Earth had nearly destroyed itself several times through warfare. Nuclear weapons, biological agents, environmental collapse. Each time, humanity had pulled back from the brink and survived. They knew extinction was possible because they had nearly caused their own, perhaps. That experience would make them understand the coalition's situation. Or perhaps they would see a galactic war as none of their concern and ignore the request entirely. Prin appeared at his door. "Ambassador, the message has been sent?" "Now we wait." "Now we wait," Tilren agreed. He did not hold much hope, but hope was all they had left. 2 weeks passed with no response. Then 3 weeks. The swarm advanced through 2 more systems. Coalition forces retreated again. Some counselors accused Tilren of wasting time on fantasies while their people died. Then, on the 24th day, Earth responded. The message was brief. "Received your request. Preparing appropriate response." "Stand by." Tilren read it 3 times. "Preparing appropriate response." What did that mean? Perhaps a shipment of supplies? Maybe a small squadron of observers? He tried not to expect too much. What he did not know was that humanity took requests for reinforcements very seriously indeed. Admiral Rebecca Walsh had seen the message 3 times before calling the emergency meeting. Each reading made her angrier. Not at the Coalition for asking, but at the universe for putting them in this position. Entire species being wiped out while the galaxy watched helplessly. The war room filled quickly. Representatives from every Earth nation took their seats. Military advisors stood along the walls. Holographic displays showed star charts with the swarm's progression marked in hostile red. The invasion pattern was clear and terrifying. The parasitic hive mind moved like a plague, consuming everything in its path. "Let me be direct," Walsh began without preamble. "The Coalition is dying. They have weeks, maybe months before complete collapse. They asked for help because they have no other options. The question before us is simple. Do we intervene?" General Park from the Asian Defense Force spoke first. "Our responsibility is Earth's security. Getting involved in an alien war could bring the swarm to our doorstep." "The swarm is already coming," Walsh replied, highlighting the invasion route. "Current projections show them reaching our sector within 10 years if unchecked. We can fight them now with allies or fight them alone later after they have consumed half the galaxy and grown stronger." "There is another consideration," Dr. Yuki Tanaka added. The chief medical officer had been reviewing Coalition casualty reports. These are not soldiers dying. Entire civilian populations are being exterminated. Children, families, cultures thousands of years old. Gone in days. The room went quiet. Humanity had its own dark history. Wars that killed millions. Genocides that stained their past. But they had learned from those horrors. Built international laws. Created the United Earth. Government specifically to prevent such atrocities from happening again. Captain Omar Hassan studied the tactical data. The Coalition's problem is predictable warfare. They use the same strategies repeatedly. The swarm adapts to each tactic and counters it. They need flexibility, combined arms doctrine, unpredictability. Can we provide that? Someone asked. Hassan smiled grimly. Humanity wrote the book on adaptive warfare. We have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know every dirty trick, every unconventional strategy, every way to win when you are outmatched." Walsh let the discussion continue for another hour. Arguments for and against intervention flew back and forth. The practical concerns were valid. Earth's fleet had never faced combat beyond their solar system. They would be fighting an enemy that had defeated civilizations far more advanced than themselves, but Walsh kept returning to one thought. When the resource wars nearly destroyed Earth 50 years ago, humanity had been on the brink. If some outside force had offered help, then would they have taken it? Would they have survived without it? "I'm calling for a vote," Walsh announced. "All in favor of military intervention?" Hands rose around the table. Not just a majority. Every single representative voted yes. Even those who had argued against it moments before raised their hands. When faced with genocide, humanity found its conscience. "Then it is decided," Walsh said. "We go to war." The mobilization began immediately. Every shipyard in the solar system received activation orders. Earth orbital platforms, Mars construction facilities, the asteroid belt mining stations, Jupiter's fuel refineries. All shifted to war production. Captain Hassan took command of the carrier Resolute, one of Earth's newest vessels. Around him, dozens of other captains received their assignments. Battleships, destroyers, cruisers, support vessels. The fleet manifests grew longer by the hour. Dr. Tanaka converted 3 medical frigates into mobile hospitals. She handpicked surgical teams and trauma specialists. Her staff loaded supplies for treating species they had never met before. Working from coalition medical data. The message went out across Earth's networks. Volunteers needed. The response was overwhelming. Young soldiers eager to prove themselves. Veterans who remembered their own wars. Pilots who saw adventure in the stars. Medics who wanted to save lives. Engineers who could keep ships running under impossible conditions. Lieutenant Gary Okonkwo, a communications specialist, was assigned as liaison to coalition forces. His job was to make sure humans and aliens could coordinate effectively. He spent 12-hour days learning coalition protocols and communication standards. In classified briefings, military scientists analyzed everything known about the swarm. The hive mind's greatest strength was adaptation. It learned from every encounter and modified its biology accordingly. Traditional weapons became useless after the first engagement. "Then we do not use traditional tactics," Hassan explained to his officers. "We rotate weapon types constantly. We use strategies they have never seen. We make them adapt so fast they cannot keep up." Weapons testing expanded dramatically. Railguns, plasma cannons, missile systems, energy beams, kinetic and directed energy, chemical and nuclear. Humanity had developed an arsenal from centuries of warfare, and now they would deploy all of it. 3 weeks of preparation. Ship crews trained in zero-gravity combat drills. Marines practiced boarding actions. Fighter pilots ran simulation after simulation. Medical teams studied alien biology. Engineers stress-tested every system. Admiral Walsh visited the fleet before departure. She walked through the hangar bay of her flagship, watching crews load ordnance and run final checks. These were Earth's sons and daughters preparing to fight for species they had never met. "Why are we doing this?" a young ensign asked her. The question was genuine, not challenging. Walsh considered her answer carefully. "Because it is right? Because when someone asks for help and we can give it, we should. Because every species in that coalition is someone's family and they deserve to live. Because if we do nothing and they die, we will never forgive ourselves." The ensign nodded, understanding. Launch day arrived. 412 vessels gathered at the rally point beyond Neptune's orbit. The largest military fleet in human history. Battleships bristled with weapons. Carriers held thousands of fighters. Hospital ships stood ready to receive wounded. Supply vessels carried enough ammunition and provisions for months of campaign. Admiral Walsh took her position on the bridge of the dreadnought, indomitable. Around her, officers monitored systems and awaited orders. The entire fleet held position, synchronized and ready. "All ships report ready," the operations officer announced. Walsh took a breath. They were about to jump into an alien war against an enemy that had nearly conquered the galaxy. They might not come back. But they were going anyway, because that was what humans did when others needed help. All ships engage hyperspace drives. Destination, Coalition space. Let us go save some lives? The fleet jumped together, leaving Sol System behind and carrying Earth's answer to the desperate plea. The Coalition had asked for reinforcements. They were about to learn what that word meant to humanity. Ambassador Tilren had not slept properly in weeks. Each night brought news of another system falling to the swarm. Each morning meant writing condolence messages to families who had lost everything. The diplomatic chamber had become a place of mourning rather than negotiation. Today, he waited by the observation deck, expecting nothing and hoping for anything. The humans had sent a brief message saying their response was arriving. Probably a token gesture. Maybe a few ships with supplies. Tilren would accept it gratefully and try not to show disappointment. Commander Hyland stood beside him, equally exhausted. The military veteran had stopped making optimistic predictions weeks ago. Even if they send 20 ships, it will help, he said quietly. We need every vessel we can get. 20 ships would be generous, Tilren replied. They likely do not want to commit more to an alien conflict. Prin arrived, the young aide still maintaining hope, despite everything. The humans should arrive any moment now. Their punctuality is impressive. The observation deck's alert system chimed. Hyperspace signatures detected. Incoming vessels, a single human ship materialized in the distance. It was larger than Tilren expected, bristling with weapon arrays. Before he could comment, another ship appeared. Then another. Then 10 more. Then 50. Then hundreds. How many ships did they send? Halen asked, his voice rising. The operations officer checked the sensors 3 times, certain the readings were wrong. Sir, I am detecting 412 vessels. Multiple class types. This has to be an error. Split the display, Tilren ordered, his hands trembling. Show me everything. The observation deck's windows filled with holographic markers. Each one represented a human vessel. Battleships the size of small moons. Carriers that could hold thousands of fighters. Sleek destroyers built for speed and firepower. Medical frigates marked with red crosses. Supply ships loaded with equipment. Troop transports ready to deploy soldiers. The coalition officers stared in stunned silence. This was not a token force. This was an invasion fleet. The entire military might of an emerging species, committed to a war that was not even theirs. Open a channel, Tilren managed to say. Immediately. The communication screen activated, showing a human woman in military uniform. Her expression was professional but not cold. Admiral Rebecca Walsh, according to the identification data. Ambassador Tilren, I presume. I am Admiral Walsh of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your request for assistance. The fleet is at your disposal. Admiral, I must confirm, Tilren said carefully. All 400 ships are here for the coalition? 412, Walsh corrected. We brought hospital ships and supply vessels as well. Your message indicated an extinction-level threat. We took that seriously. Halen stepped forward. Admiral, you understand we are losing this war? The swarm has destroyed 3 species completely and devastated dozens more. This is not a minor conflict. We read your reports thoroughly, Commander. That is exactly why we brought everything we have. Where do you need us? The directness caught Tilren off guard. No negotiations about payment. No demands for territory or resources. No political maneuvering. Just a simple question. Where do you need us? Prin worked frantically at the data terminal, pulling up strategic displays. The Kishari system is under blockade. The swarm has them trapped on their homeworld. They have maybe days left before starvation sets in? We lost 3 relief fleets trying to break through. Walsh studied the tactical map for 30 seconds. We will handle it. Send us all intelligence on swarm ship types, weapon systems, and tactical patterns. Anything you have learned about their adaptation capabilities. Admiral, the swarm adapts to everything, Halen warned. Whatever weapons you use, they will develop counters within hours. Every coalition species has tried different approaches. Nothing works long-term. Then we will adapt faster, Walsh replied simply. Humanity has some experience with impossible situations. A coalition scientist named Drival pushed forward. He had been studying the swarm for years, losing colleagues to its advance. Admiral, these are not ordinary enemies. They are a collective intelligence that shares information instantly. Every ship is part of one mind. They learn from every battle simultaneously. Walsh smiled slightly. Then they are about to get a very diverse education. We brought kinetic weapons, energy weapons, chemical weapons, biological countermeasures, electronic warfare systems, and a few surprises. If they want to adapt to all of that at once, they are welcome to try. Lieutenant Gary Okonkwo appeared on the screen beside Walsh. Ambassador, I have been assigned as liaison between our forces. I will coordinate joint operations and facilitate communication. Please transmit all tactical data to the Indomitable. The data transfer began immediately. Years of combat records, biological studies of swarm organisms, ship classifications, battle analyses. Everything the Coalition had learned through devastating losses, Walsh reviewed it in real time, her expression darkening as she absorbed the casualty figures. You have been fighting alone for too long. That ends now. Admiral, Tilren asked, why did you come? Earth has no alliance with the Coalition. This is not your war. Walsh was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. Ambassador, your message describes species being wiped out. Civilizations that had existed for thousands of years, gone in weeks. You ask for help. We are capable of giving it. That makes it simple. But the cost, Tilren pressed. Your people will die in this war. Yes, Walsh agreed without hesitation. War has costs. We understand that. But there are worse things than dying in battle. Standing by while others are exterminated is one of them. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way. Halen brought up the Kishari situation again. If you truly mean to help them, you should leave immediately. They do not have much time. Understood. Fleet will depart within the hour. Commander Halen, I would appreciate any Coalition vessels that can join us. Our crews could learn from your experience. The offer surprised everyone. The humans were asking for Coalition help, not the other way around. It was a gesture of respect that the battered Coalition forces desperately needed. I will personally lead our squadron, Halen said. It will be an honor to fight alongside you. Walsh nodded. Then let us go save some lives. Indomitable out. The transmission ended. The observation deck remained silent for a long moment. Then the operations officer started laughing. Not from humor, but from relief so intense it had to escape somehow. They came, the officer said. They actually came. Prin smiled, vindicated. I told you humans were different. Tilren watched the human fleet organizing into battle formations with practiced efficiency. Ships that had never fought together moved like they had trained for years. Carrier groups formed defensive screens. Battleships took point positions. Hospital ships hung back, ready to receive casualties. Yes, Tilren agreed quietly. They are different indeed. For the first time in months, he felt something beyond despair. The swarm was about to learn what happened when they threatened a species that had allies from Earth. The Kishari homeworld filled the view screen, a beautiful planet of purple oceans and green continents. Surrounding it like a disease was the swarm blockade. 214 biomechanical vessels orbited in precise formations. Slowly starving the population below, Captain Omar Hassan stood in the Combat Information Center of the carrier Resolute, studying the enemy fleet. The swarm ships looked organic, like they had been grown instead of built. Chitinous armor-covered hulls that pulsed with bioluminescence. Weapon ports opened and closed like breathing mouths. Analysis? Hassan asked his tactical officer. The swarm has adapted heavy shielding based on Coalition energy weapons. Their armor shows resistance to kinetic impacts up to railgun velocities. Point defense systems are optimized against missile approach vectors used by Vorian forces. So they have learned everything the Coalition tried and built counters for it. Yes, sir. They are very good at not dying the same way twice. Hassan smiled. Good thing we have never fought them before. They have no idea what we do. The combined human and Coalition fleet held position at the system's edge. Admiral Walsh had given Hassan tactical command of the assault. It was a test and an honor. The first major engagement with the swarm would set the tone for the entire war. Commander, Helen's Coalition squadron joined the formation. 12 battered ships, veterans of too many losing battles. Hassan opened a channel directly to the Chitauri commander. Commander, your ships will form the second wave. Let us show the swarm something they have not seen before. Then you hit them while they are adapting. Understood, Captain. What is your opening move? Everything at once. Hassan switched to fleet-wide communication. All ships execute Alpha 7. Fighters launch immediately. Destroy those ships. 3,000 human fighters erupted from carrier bays. They came in waves, staggered formations that prevented mass targeting. The swarm's point defense systems opened fire, tracking algorithms based on months of fighting Coalition craft, but human fighters did not fly like Coalition fighters. They broke formation constantly, used random evasion patterns, employed chaff and electronic countermeasures the swarm had never encountered. Swarm targeting solutions failed repeatedly. The first fighter wave armed their missiles and fired at maximum range. The swarm's adaptive shields activated, optimized frequencies humming as they prepared to absorb energy weapons, except the missiles were not energy weapons. They were simple kinetic penetrators with shaped explosive charges, designed in Earth's 20th century and still effective. The swarm shields did nothing against physical projectiles traveling at hypersonic speeds, ATN. Swarm vessels took critical damage in the first salvo. The hive mind reacted instantly, adapting shield frequencies to block kinetic energy. New defensive protocols uploaded across the fleet in seconds. Second wave, engage, Hassan ordered calmly. Human destroyers moved in, their railguns tracking targets with computer-assisted precision. Tungsten slugs accelerated to incredible velocities and slammed into swarm hulls. The adaptive shields held for the first few impacts. But railguns fired faster than biological systems could reinforce defenses. The swarm adapted again, thickening armor and adjusting shield geometries. The adaptation took 40 seconds. Long enough for another 30 ships to suffer catastrophic damage. Now hit them with energy weapons, Hassan commanded. Battleships opened fire with plasma cannons and particle beams. The swarm's shields were still calibrated for kinetic defense, leaving them vulnerable to energy attacks for precious seconds before adaptation occurred. In those seconds, human weapons carved through the blockade like surgical instruments. The swarm was adapting, but they were adapting to everything simultaneously. Kinetic, energy, missile, fighter, each requiring different biological responses. The hive mind's strength became its weakness as it tried to counter multiple threat types at once. They are spreading their adaptation too thin, the tactical officer reported. No single defense is fully optimized. Then we keep them off balance, Hassan replied. Rotate weapon types every 90 seconds. Do not let them finish adapting to anything. The battle became a brutal dance. Human ships cycled through their entire arsenal, forcing the swarm to constantly shift defenses. When the hive mind adapted to missiles, railguns tore them apart. When they optimized against railguns, energy weapons burned through shields. When they countered energy weapons, fighters delivered kinetic payloads. The swarm tried its own tactics. Damaged vessels attempted ramming maneuvers, the standard method for taking enemies down when weapons failed. Human point defense turrets shredded the incoming hulks. Tractor beams grabbed damaged ships and used them as shields against other attackers. Major Sophie Durand led Marine boarding teams onto crippled swarm vessels. Her soldiers wore sealed armor and carried weapons designed for close combat. They planted explosives in critical systems and extracted biological samples for analysis. "This is disgusting," one Marine reported, looking at the organic corridors that pulsed like living tissue. "The whole ship is alive." "Then kill it faster," Durand ordered. Setting charges on what appeared to be a neural cluster, the boarding teams withdrew and the charges detonated. 3 more swarm ships went dark, their biological systems catastrophically damaged. The tactic was brutal but effective. The swarm had no defense against enemies inside their vessels. Coalition forces joined the battle, hitting targets weakened by human attacks. Commander Halen's ships moved with new confidence, no longer fighting a losing battle but part of a winning strategy. Dr. Yuki, Tanaka's hospital ships held position behind the fleet, receiving wounded from both sides of the battle. Human casualties were lighter than expected, but swarm bioweapons were taking their toll. Medics treated injuries they had never seen before while Tanaka, coordinated with coalition doctors, 8 hours into the engagement, the tide had clearly turned. The swarm blockade was breaking. Human tactical flexibility overwhelmed the hive mind's ability to adapt. Every time they developed a counter, humans switched to something different. "Sir, detecting escape pods launching from the surface," a sensor officer reported. "Kishari civilians evacuating to our hospital ships." "Get them aboard," Hassan ordered. "That is why we came here." Fighter squadrons provided cover while evacuation transports made runs to the surface. Thousands of Kishari refugees fled their dying world. Rescued by species they had never met before, the last swarm vessel attempted one final ramming attack, its biological drives pushing it toward the Resolute at suicidal speeds. Hassan did not even flinch. "Point defense, full spread. Send it to hell." Railgun turrets tracked the incoming threat and fired in perfect synchronization. The swarm ship disintegrated into debris before getting within weapons range. Silence fell across the combat information center. Then the tactical officer spoke quietly. "Sir, all swarm vessels destroyed. The blockade is broken." Hassan let out a breath he had been holding for hours. "Damage report. 3 destroyers with moderate damage. 18 fighters lost. 62 wounded, 8 critical. No ships destroyed." The numbers were almost unbelievable. The coalition had lost 3 entire fleets trying to break this blockade. Humanity had done it in 8 hours with minimal losses. "Transmit message to Admiral Walsh," Hassan said. "First engagement successful. Kishari system secured. Awaiting next assignment." On the observation deck of Commander Halen's flagship, coalition officers watched human ships form protective perimeters around the planet. Medical transports continued evacuating civilians. Supply ships delivered food and medical supplies to the surface. "They won," Halen said, still processing what he had witnessed. "They actually won." His tactical officer pulled up recordings of the battle. "Sir, they used 17 different weapon types in rotating sequences. The swarm never fully adapted to any single system. By the time they optimized one defense, humans had switched to 3 other attack methods." Tactical flexibility, Halen realized. They do not rely on any single approach. They use everything, and they coordinate it perfectly. Every ship knew exactly when to switch weapons, when to advance, when to provide cover. That level of coordination requires training we do not have. Halen thought about centuries of coalition military doctrine. Standard formations, predictable tactics, methods that worked until they did not. Humanity had shown them something completely different. His communication panel chimed. Captain Hassan's face appeared on the screen. "Commander, the Kishari are asking to thank their rescuers personally. Would you join me on the surface?" Halen agreed immediately. They took a shuttle down through the atmosphere, landing near a refugee camp where thousands of Kishari waited. The aliens looked exhausted but alive. Saved from certain death, a Kishari elder approached, speaking through a translation device. "We owe you our lives. Both of you. All of you." Hassan shook his head. "You do not owe us anything. We just did what was right." The elder looked confused. "But you are strangers to us. Why would you risk your lives for strangers?" Hassan glanced at Halen, then back to the elder. Because someone asked for help and we could give it. That makes you not strangers anymore. That makes you friends? The Kishari elder had no response to that. Neither did Commander Halen. In that moment, both began to understand that humanity fought wars differently than anyone else in the galaxy. 2 months had changed everything. The war room that once echoed with despair now hummed with cautious optimism. Ambassador Tilran stood before the strategic display, watching blue markers push red ones back system by system. The swarm was retreating for the first time in the war's history, Commander. Halen reviewed the latest battle reports with something resembling satisfaction. 15 major engagements. Humans victorious in all of them. Coalition forces learning their tactics. We are actually winning. Not just winning, Prin added, pulling up casualty comparisons. We are winning efficiently. Human losses are minimal compared to what we suffered before. They know how to fight without dying pointlessly. Admiral Walsh's hologram materialized in the center of the room. She looked tired but focused. Behind her, tactical officers worked at their stations in the perpetual motion of military operations. Ambassador Commander, we have identified the swarm's central coordination world. Our intelligence suggests their hive mind nexus is located there. If we destroy it, the entire swarm network collapses. The implications were staggering. One decisive strike could end the war completely, but the risk would be enormous. The swarm would defend their nexus with everything they had left. What do you need from us? Tilran asked. Everything you can spare. This will be the largest offensive of the war. We are gathering our full fleet, but coalition support would make the difference between costly victory and overwhelming success. Halen studied the tactical projection of the target system. The Nexus world was deep in swarm territory, surrounded by defensive installations and hundreds of vessels. Admiral, this is a fortress. Even with your fleet, casualties will be severe. Yes, Walsh agreed without hesitation. War has costs. But ending it now saves billions of lives in the long run. Every day we delay, the swarm kills more people. Every system we fight through conventionally costs coalition lives. One hard battle ends it forever. The logic was sound but brutal. Tilran admired humanity's willingness to make difficult decisions. The coalition had spent months trying to avoid costly engagements, which only prolonged the suffering. We will contribute every ship that can fly, Tilran promised. When do we strike? 3 weeks. That gives us time to integrate coalition forces into the battle plan and position supply lines. Captain Hassan is coordinating tactical training with your commanders. The hologram disappeared. Halen immediately began organizing the coalition fleet for the offensive. Ships that had been scattered across defensive positions would concentrate for one massive assault. Meanwhile, across human and coalition vessels, something remarkable was happening. The two militaries were learning from each other. Human officers taught coalition crews about adaptive tactics and combined arms warfare. Coalition veterans shared knowledge about swarm behavior and long-term operational planning. Lieutenant Gary Okonkwo spent 14 hours a day facilitating this exchange. He discovered that coalition species were not inferior fighters. They had just been using rigid doctrine against an enemy that punished predictability. Given human tactics, they adapted quickly. In the medical bay of the hospital ship Mercy, Dr. Tanaka worked alongside coalition healers. The cross-training had produced breakthroughs. Human trauma medicine combined with coalition biological knowledge created treatment. Protocols neither could have developed alone. The swarm uses bioweapons we barely understand, a Vorian healer named Miran explained. But human medicine approaches problems mechanically. It is helping us think differently about treatment. Tanaka nodded, examining a healing agent developed from coalition biotechnology and human pharmaceutical principles. We save more lives working together than separately. That applies to more than just medicine. On the training deck of the Resolute, Major Sophie Duran ran coalition Marines through boarding action drills. The aliens were enthusiastic but lacked experience with the chaotic close-quarters combat humans specialized in. You think too much? Duran told a group of Chitauri soldiers. In a boarding action, you have seconds to make decisions. Trust your training and move. The Marines ran the exercise again. This time they moved faster, more instinctively. They would never match human reflexes evolved on a death world, but they no longer needed to. They had learned to work as teams. Covering weaknesses and supporting strengths, Prin interviewed human soldiers for a cultural study he was preparing. The young Chitauri wanted to understand what made humanity different. The answers were revealing. Why do you fight for species you never met before? Prin asked a pilot named Raj Patel. Patel thought about it while cleaning his fighters' weapon systems. Because they needed help. Because we could provide it. Because if everyone only looked out for themselves, the universe would be a darker place. We fight for the Kishari and the Vorian and your people because that is what decent people do. But you risk death for strangers. Everyone we love was a stranger once. You become family by choosing to care about each other. The coalition asked for help, so you stopped being strangers. Similar conversations happened across the fleet. Coalition personnel kept asking the same question in different ways, trying to understand the human perspective. The answers were always some variation of the same theme. Humanity fought not for conquest or resources. But because they had decided the coalition mattered, Chief Engineer Luis Marino worked with coalition technical staff to modify their vessels for faster tactical responses. The aliens had excellent technology but designed it for predetermined strategies. Humans needed equipment that could adapt on the fly. Your power distribution is too specialized, Marino explained to a Vorian engineer. You optimize for specific weapon types. We use modular systems that can redirect energy anywhere instantly. Less efficient overall, but infinitely more flexible. The modifications took weeks of work, but coalition ships emerged faster and more versatile. Not human level yet, but improving daily. As the offensive date approached, the combined fleet gathered. Over 600 vessels, the largest military force ever assembled in coalition history. Human ships formed the core, but coalition vessels were integrated throughout in mixed squadrons. Admiral Walsh toured the fleet via shuttle, visiting both human and coalition ships. She wanted every crew to understand the stakes and the strategy. This was not just humanity's battle anymore. It was everyone's. On the Chitauri cruiser Defiant, Walsh addressed Commander Halen and his officers. In 3 days, we jump into the hardest fight of this war. The swarm will throw everything at us. Ships will be lost. People will die. But if we succeed, the war ends. Every species in the coalition survives. Your children and grandchildren live in peace. That is worth fighting for. Halen nodded slowly. Admiral, months ago we thought we were doomed. Then humanity arrived and showed us we could still win. Whatever happens in this battle, you have already given us our future back. Then let us make sure that future is a long one, Walsh replied. The final preparations continued. Weapons checked and rechecked. Battle plans memorized and drilled. Medical teams positioned to handle mass casualties. Chaplains of various species offered blessings and prayers. In the Indomitable's Combat Information Center, Walsh reviewed the assault plan one final time. The strategy was aggressive and risky, relying on speed and overwhelming force to punch through to the Nexus before the swarm could respond effectively. Captain Hassan joined her, studying the same tactical display. It is a good plan. Risky, but good? All good plans are risky, Walsh replied. Safe plans do not win wars. They just postpone defeat. The coalition is ready. They trust us now. They will follow human ships into hell if we ask. Let us hope we do not have to ask that much from them. The countdown reached its final hours. Across the fleet, soldiers wrote messages to loved ones, knowing some would not return. Pilots ran pre-flight checks on fighters. Marines sharpened combat knives and loaded ammunition. Medical personnel prepared surgical bays for the incoming wounded. Ambassador Tilren stood in the observation deck of the command station, watching the massive fleet prepare to jump. Beside him, Prin looked both excited and terrified. Do you think we will win? Prin asked. I think we have a chance, Tilren replied honestly. Months ago, we had no chance at all. Humanity gave us hope. Now they are giving us victory. Whatever happens, we owe them everything. The fleet synchronized their hyperspace drives. 623 vessels, crews from 8 different species, all united in one goal. End the swarm, save the galaxy. Admiral Walsh's voice carried across every ship in the fleet. All vessels, this is Walsh. Today we finish what the swarm started. Today we show them that genocide has consequences. Today we fight not as separate species but as one united force. For the coalition, for peace, for the future. All ships engage hyperspace drives. Bring us to war. The fleet jumped together, leaving the safety of coalition space behind. Ahead waited the swarm's final stronghold and the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The swarm Nexus world appeared on the viewscreens like a nightmare made real. Organic structures covered the entire planet, pulsing with sickly bioluminescence. The atmosphere itself seemed diseased, thick with spores and biological material. Surrounding it was the largest swarm fleet anyone had ever seen. Nearly 1,000 ships arranged in defensive layers. Captain Hassan felt his stomach tighten. This was going to be brutal. All ships, defensive formation Charlie 9. Hospital ships fall back to secondary positions. Fighters launch on my mark. The swarm fleet began moving immediately, detecting the intrusion into their most sacred space. The hive mind knew what losing this world meant: extinction. They would fight with desperate fury. Here they come, the tactical officer announced unnecessarily. Every screen showed swarm vessels accelerating toward them, weapons already charging. Let them come, Admiral Walsh ordered from the Indomitable. All ships, hold fire until they reach engagement range. Make every shot count. The two fleets rushed toward each other like colliding storms. The space between them filled with weapons fire. Plasma bolts, kinetic rounds, missiles, energy beams. The swarm threw everything forward in one massive wave, hoping to break the attackers through sheer force. Human and coalition ships absorbed the initial barrage. Shields flared and failed. Armor took hits. 3 coalition destroyers went dark immediately, overwhelmed by focused fire. But the fleet held formation, weathering the storm. Return fire, Walsh commanded. All weapons, all targets. Break their lines. 600 ships opened fire simultaneously. The concentrated barrage tore through the swarm's front ranks like a hurricane. Dozens of biomechanical vessels shattered under the assault, their adaptive defenses overwhelmed before they could react. But the swarm had numbers. For every ship destroyed, 2 more moved forward. The battle descended into chaos. Ship-to-ship combat raged across the entire system. Fighters dueled with swarm drones. Capital ships exchanged broadsides at point-blank range. Major Durand led the ground assault on the Nexus world itself. Transport ships punched through the orbital defenses under fighter cover and dove toward the planet's surface. Anti-air fire filled the sky. 2 transports exploded before reaching the landing zones. Durand's ship hit the ground hard. The romp dropped and Marines poured out into an alien landscape. Everything was organic. The ground itself felt alive beneath their boots, pulsing and writhing. Defensive organisms the size of buildings turned toward them. Flamethrowers forward, Durand ordered. Burn everything that moves. The Marines advanced in tight formations, using fire and explosives against biological defenses that had never faced such tactics. The swarm had evolved to counter energy weapons and kinetic rounds. They had no defense against simple fire. Coalition soldiers fought alongside humans, their initial fear replaced by grim determination. A Chitauri sergeant named Calran rallied his squad as they pushed toward the Nexus structure. For every world they destroyed, for every life they took. Make them pay. Above the planet, the space battle reached its peak intensity. Captain Hassan coordinated fighter strikes while managing damage control across his ship. The Resolute had taken multiple hits, fires burning in 3 compartments. Sir, Coalition cruiser Defiant requesting assistance. They have lost engines and are taking heavy fire. Hassan did not hesitate. Destroyers Fox and Bear, get between them and those swarm ships. All port batteries, suppressing fire on their attackers. Human ships moved to protect damaged coalition vessels without being asked. It was instinctive now. They were not separate forces anymore. They were one fleet. Dr. Tanaka worked frantically in the Mercy's surgical bay. Wounded poured in from both sides of the battle. Human, Chitauri, Vorian, all bleeding the same regardless of species. Her staff saved who they could and mourned who they could not. Another critical incoming, a nurse warned. Human pilot, massive trauma. Raj Patel had taken a direct hit to his fighter. The canopy was shattered, his suit breached. Tanaka worked for 20 minutes before stabilizing him. He would live, but barely. "Stay with me, pilot," Tanaka said. "You do not get to die today. We need you for the victory celebration." On the planet's surface, Duran's teams reached the Nexus structure. It towered above them like a grotesque cathedral, pulsing with the combined consciousness of the entire swarm hive mind. Defending it were thousands of warrior organisms, each one designed for killing. "Charges here, here, and here," Duran marked on her tactical display. "We need to bring this whole structure down." Chief Engineer Marino's voice crackled over the radio. "Major, I am sending you precise locations. Hit those nodes and the whole thing collapses from structural failure." Marines fought through waves of defenders to plant explosives at the critical points. Coalition soldiers covered their retreat, holding defensive positions while the charges were armed. The casualty rate was horrific. For every meter gained, someone fell, but they reached the final node. Duran placed the last charge herself while her team held the line. "All teams, fall back. Detonate in 90 seconds." The retreat was a nightmare. Running through hostile terrain while swarm organisms pursued them. 3 Marines did not make it. Neither did 2 Chitauri soldiers. Their sacrifice bought time for the others to reach the transports. "Blow it," Duran ordered from the safety of her ship. The charges detonated simultaneously. The Nexus structure collapsed, its biological supports failing catastrophically. The central chamber where the hive mind's consciousness resided was crushed under millions of tons of organic matter. In space, every swarm ship suddenly went dark. No explosions. No death throes. They just stopped functioning, dead in an instant as the hive mind controlling them died. The sudden silence was eerie. One moment the fleet was locked in desperate combat. The next, the enemy simply ceased to exist as a threat. "Confirm all swarm vessels non-functional," Hassan ordered, not quite believing it. "Confirmed, sir." "No active targeting systems. No power signatures. They are dead. All of them." The realization spread across the fleet. The war was over. The swarm was finished. After months of fighting, it ended not with a final desperate stand, but with sudden, complete victory. Meryl Walsh let herself feel relief for the first time in weeks. "All ships, cease fire. Begin search and rescue operations. Recover all personnel." The costs became clear as damage reports came in. 38 human ships destroyed or crippled beyond repair. 17 coalition vessels lost. Over 2,000 dead from both sides. Thousands more wounded. The price of victory written in blood and sacrifice. 3 weeks later, a memorial ceremony was held on the Coalition Command Station. Representatives from every species attended. Names were read. Stories shared. Tears shed for those who gave everything. Ambassador Tilran stood before the gathered crowd. "Today we honor the fallen. Human and coalition, fighting side by side. They died so we could live. They sacrificed so our children could have a future. We will never forget them." Admiral Walsh spoke next. "These people were strangers months ago. They came from different worlds, different cultures, different species, but they became family through shared purpose. They showed us that when we stand together, nothing can defeat us." The memorial concluded with a moment of silence. Then the real work began. Treaties were signed, trade agreements negotiated, cultural exchange programs established. Earth officially joined the coalition, welcomed not as junior partners but as equals who had earned their place. Captain Hassan received promotion to Fleet Admiral and assignment to train coalition forces in human tactics. Major Duran took command of the Joint Special Forces Division. Dr. Tanaka established medical schools to teach integrated treatment protocols. Prin transferred to Earth as the coalition's ambassador, dedicating himself to building friendship between humanity and the galaxy. He wrote extensively about human culture, trying to explain to other species what made them different. Lieutenant Okonkwo remained as permanent liaison, coordinating the integration of human and coalition military doctrine. The two forces would never fight separately again. Admiral Walsh stood in her office on Luna Base, looking at a photo of the combined fleet. Human ships and coalition vessels flying together in victory formation. They had been strangers once. Now they were allies, friends, family. A message arrived from Ambassador Tilran. The Coalition Council was voting on proposals for the post-war galaxy. Trade routes to Earth, joint exploration missions, combined defense pacts. The galaxy had changed forever, Walsh smiled. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage through war, but they would stay through friendship and mutual respect. The Coalition had asked for reinforcements, and humanity had answered with everything they had, not because they expected rewards, not for conquest or glory, but because when someone asks for help and you can give it, you should. Because protecting others is what decent people do. Because every stranger is just a friend you have not met yet. The swarm was gone. The war was over. The real work of peace was just beginning. And humanity would face it the same way they faced war. Together with their friends, committed completely, holding nothing back. That was what Deathworld species did. That was what humanity brought to the galaxy. Not just weapons and tactics, but the simple revolutionary idea that everyone deserves protection, everyone matters, and no one fights alone. The galaxy had learned what human reinforcements looked like. Now it would learn what human friendship meant. And that, Walsh suspected, would change everything even more than the war had.